Dan Williams, Survive Outdoors. As promised, we're going to be doing the Arizona bark scorpion. It is literally the most deadly scorpion in the United States. We spoke the previous video, which I'll link at the end here, about the striped bark scorpion, which I only mispronounced like 3 times in that video, calling it the striped back scorpion. Not sure why. Just blame it on age. So this scorpion is of the class Arachnidia. It is of the order of Scorpionus, and that is my Latin for today. I'm done. No more Latin. So its name is Centauroides sculpturatus, and the male is it's pretty good size. It's definitely bigger than the striped bark, and about 3 inches long, and it is found in the Sonora Desert. It is found in New Mexico, southwest Texas, southern Nevada, and southern California in the Baja area. And it's not just found in the desert. It can be found in pine groves, in deciduous forests, and obviously these things like under logs, clutter around your house. You need to clean all that stuff up, and we'll get into that in terms of prevention. One of the things about this little guy is that it's one of the only scorpions that likes to crawl and climb. So it will climb, it will go upside down. All your other scorpions pretty well maintain on the ground. This scorpion also, one of the things, you got to look at their diet. If you think about their diet, you're going to find the scorpions. So they like centipedes and grubs and bugs and moths. And you're going to, if those things like to hide under logs and under moist areas, you're going to find your scorpions. There also is a distant cousin of this scorpion that is in Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, and it's also called the bark scorpion, but its venom is not near as intense as the Arizona bark scorpion. So if you get stung by this scorpion, what happens? The first thing that happens is you're going to have intense pain. I mean intense. It's going to be focal at the bite site. You rarely get swelling. It rarely gets edematous. It gets red. It can get hot. This bite, well, you're going to start getting maybe numbness around the area. And what they've done is they've graded these symptoms in grade 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we're going to get into. And then at the very end of the video, we're going to talk about outdoor treatment. What can you do when you're 4 or 5 basically days out from treatment, and what you should do and what you should carry with you. So they did a study of like 88 kids. I think the mean age was 3.6 years. And the number one symptom was spasticity of the muscles. They just spasm. And you'll get tongue fasciculations. Like if you have an alcoholic who hasn't drank for 2 or 3 days, one of the things that's extremely common, I've seen it so often, is called tongue fasciculations. You have them put their tongue out and it just quivers. That happens with this type of scorpion venom. So you get tongue quivers, you get hypersalivation, you just start drooling. These kids are just almost like they're cutting their teeth in the worst possible scenario. And then the other thing that is pretty common is, I think it was like 81% of all these patients had something called opsoclonus, O-P-S-O-C-L-O-N-U-S, opsoclonus. And what that is, it's very profound. If you ever see it, you're not going to forget it. Their eyes are going to be going like this, literally in every direction, and it's involuntary. Their eyes are randomly moving. And that is a telltale sign that they have been envenomated by this scorpion. Ironically, there's also been some envenomations of the bark scorpion in Minnesota and Michigan. Well, how does that happen? Through the mail. People get things shipped to them, and in the mail there is this scorpion that, surprise, they got a scorpion in the mail. So that has happened also. Now, before 1970, there were quite a few fatalities and deaths from the bark scorpion. Since 1970, there has not been any deaths by the scorpion. So part of the reason for that is better pest control. And the other reason for that is obviously better medical care and being on it. So that's important. And about 25% of these kids out of that 88 in that study, about 25% were intubated and had respiratory issues. In a bunch of other studies, as well as this one, they found that there was no rhabdo where the muscles break down. And I've talked about that. And when you're overdoing it, whether you're working out or hiking, they did find in some very obscure cases where there was the CK was elevated, where they had some heart issues, and some of these kids had myocarditis, an inflamed heart. Rare, but you got to be aware and watch out for that. So what they've done is on these scorpion bites, they've graded them in 4 grades. So grade 1 is just a bite at the area and pain. And that pain on all of these grades usually only lasts about 2 days. And if the person's going to be admitted, they're usually at the very most only 1 night. However, if they have complications and they're a grade 4, they may be in there for 2 or 3 nights. A grade 2 is they're going to have pain and numbness at the site. They may have a thick tongue, and they may have some drooling going on. We talked about the hypersalivation. Grade 3 is you're going to get the blurred vision. You get the opsoclonus where the eyes start going all over the place. And now you're starting to get more and more nervous system issues. And then grade 4 is all of the above with respiratory involvement, and these kids have a hard time breathing. The reason why that is the type of venom and what it does. What this venom does is we've talked about that synaptic cleft that attaches to all of your neurons. It has little receptors over here, and then it's going to excrete your epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine out the other end. So let's talk about how to help you understand that, because it's important here. Let's talk about how Ritalin and ADHD meds work. So imagine, and this is going to be very simplified. Imagine you have a lot of little magnets over here on this side, and you have magnets over here, and they attach and they fill all these magnets up. So when that happens, they can't attach anywhere else. Way Cylert and Ritalin works, it floods this gap. They call it a cleft now. When I was studying, it was a synaptic gap. It floods this gap, this cleft open, with tons of norepinephrine. And it's floating around in there. But it fills all these spots and inhibits, so it can't pick up any more norepinephrine or epinephrine, which makes you hyper and makes you where you can't focus. So when it does that, you have all this free-floating chemicals around, but it can't pick it up. That's how Ritalin works. What this venom does is it basically stops the sodium from moving across. When that happens, these neurons are firing very, very, very quickly, and you're going to get muscle spasticity. They're going to tremor. It's ugly, and it hurts like hell. So that's important when we get into talking about treatment, which is coming up. In 2004, they came up with an anti-venom, and they found that it did really, really well. Especially, people are frantic. Back in the 60s, kids were dying. Back in the 70s, they didn't want that to happen again, so they came up with this anti-venom, which was developed with goats, where they increased the IgG and immunoglobulin, and then they gave this serum. What happened was there was too many bad reactions from the serum. They were having an anaphylactic reaction, so they stopped it. Then in 2012, the FDA, first time ever, approved an anti-venom, Anascorp, and ANASCORP, and that venom works really pretty well. There were some anaphylactic reactions, and you got to be cautious when you discharge the person. If they were severe enough and had respiratory issues, they got the anti-venom, but you had to be careful because you had to discharge them with criteria, because you had to watch for a serum sickness. So they would be discharged with directions: watch for urticarial, like hives, watch for severe itching, watch for muscle aches. If that happens, you're going to be taking antihistamines, maybe corticosteroids. So, but here's the kicker. The venom, the cost to the hospital for 3 vials of this venom, remember, snake venom, crowfab, is about $3,000 to $4,000 a vial, and you need to start out with at least 3 to 4 vials for a rattlesnake bite. So this venom, for the hospital cost, ranges from $10,000 to $20,000, which means they're going to be charging the patient much more. And that's for a trial of like 4 vials. So, yeah, it's insane. So what they've done now is they're only using it for obviously a very severe case. They're doing supportive treatment. And this bite on the scorpion is going to get more frequent. With climate change, I think we're going to see more and more of the scorpion bites. In 2022 it was, they had 5,500 reported scorpion bites in Arizona to 256 rattlesnake bites. That was 2 years ago. And that was up, I mean, my gosh, by at least 1,200 from 3 years before. So the population is growing, and I think the scorpions are basically increasing. Also, with climate change, you're going to see more and more of the dispersal of these bark scorpions. So that's concerning. So for my healthcare providers out there in the ED, and this hopefully, well, some people will come to urgent care. You're going to get people that go to urgent care for chest pain, which they really shouldn't do. They're going to go to urgent care for stuff they should go to the ED because they're trying to defray costs. So in the ED, what works really well is benzos, midazolam. It works really, really well. They are using opioids, fentanyl for pain. Sometimes they'll do a block of lidocaine around the bite wound, and they're doing antihistamines. And the steroids on a scorpion bite is 50-50. Not a lot of evidence that works. But for obviously if you're having an anaphylactic reaction after you get the epi, steroids have been shown to be somewhat beneficial. Prazosin, which is also the brand name of Minipress, is an alpha blocker, and what that does, it's for high blood pressure, it's used for an enlarged prostate, it's used for post-traumatic stress disorder, and what it's going to do is it vasodilates, lowers blood pressure, and is found to be very effective. Now, some wilderness medicine instructors as well as guides, docs, PAs, NPs that are guiding trips out into the desert. And if you're going into an area that is high incidence of the bark scorpion, it is advisable, as per our BOC and these instructors, to carry prazosin on them. And the dosage is 250 micrograms Q46H as needed for children and 500 for adults. And you do that for 24 hours. They've even suggested, and I wouldn't do this, is bringing anti-venom along. I don't see the need, really, unless you have some little kids. There has not been, you have more of a risk of a serum sickness. There's not been a fatality in 35, 40 years. So I think that's overkill. The other thing that's important to note here, if in the rare situation you got anti-venom, you cannot get it a second time. You can in severe instances, but you run the risk of having a reaction once you've had it the first time. That's an important note. All right, prevention. And what are you going to do if you're non-medical and you're in the outdoors and you get a scorpion bite? For prevention, what you're going to do is mend your screens to your home, clean up all the clutter around your house, wood clutter, whatever it might be, caulk, seal all cracks and crevices. These little guys are pervasive. They'll get in anywhere. Mow your yard. Keep it down short. That's important. If you have a yard. I mean, some places in Arizona, when I've been to Tucson and up in Sonoma, I mean, there's hardly no yard in a lot of those places. So mow your yard if you got grass. How's that? And watch out for, the weeds and the clutter. Treatment in the outdoors. You go on this hike and you're in the Baja, you're in the Sonora Desert, you're out there photographing cactuses, you're looking for rattlesnakes, whatever it might be. One of the things you want to have with you is some ability to have some cool water. It's not impossible, it can be done, because if you get bit, you want cool compresses. You want to have at least 2 different kinds of antihistamines on you. That is imperative. You're not going to be having Prazosin, even though I've only prescribed it 2 or 3 times for people that were heading out to the desert area. So it's highly unlikely you're even going to have that, and it's not even in my little realm of advisement. So you want to be able to have ability to call for help, and that's really all you're going to do. You're going to elevate it and keep the wound at the level of your heart, and if anything changes on these treatment updates, I will let you know. All right, guys, I know it was a long video. If you hung in this long, are you kidding me? That's fantastic. All right, guys, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Keep your eyes on the rise and your face to the wind. We will see you next time.